Hello fellow Gwent players, and welcome to another one of these discussion videos. And today I have a little question for you. What is a card that you've never actually seen played? Because me personally, I've been playing Gwent since open beta, carrying on to homecoming, and I've been playing the game pretty much every day since then. So I've seen a lot of decks and I've played a lot of decks, and there still exists card that I've actually yet to see being played against me. So I'm gonna jump into the deck builder and look at some cards that I've actually never seen played and talk about them basically, and basically also justify why I think they don't see any play, and maybe what they can do to see play, or if the card is just doomed for eternity. Now this is the first card, Dandelion Vainglory. Deploy, destroy an enemy beast. And I mean, it's quite obvious why no one would actually play this card, because you're basically relying on your opponent having a big beast for this to gain any value. So I do see the reason why I've never seen it. I played it personally. I made a meme cards video around it, but I've never actually played against it. I did like the effect that it had in open beta, where it would boost itself by every sort of Geralt, Yennefer card that you have in your deck. That would be pretty cool if they sort of brought something like this back, or if it boosts itself by every sort of legendary card you have. That would also be kind of decent, but with the way it currently is, I don't think this card will ever see any play in any deck, because it doesn't make any sense, right? So yeah. The next card is Colossal Ifrit. Zeal order damage all units on the opposite row by 1, cooldown 3. Now this is one of my earlier meme cards videos, not that early. It is one of the first like 20 or 30 ones that I did. And this card is so bad, like it actually is terrible. There's so many better ways to do row punishment, and this card is so bad because of its cooldown 3 ability, and its ability itself being like a late game ability. So it's such a convoluted ability that makes really no sense, and the cooldown 3 is just way too slow, and it's so easy for the opponent to kill this card that it really doesn't make sense for you to ever really play this card. And yeah, that's why I've never actually seen this card being played. I mean, I played it myself a few times, but it's about me actually seeing the card being played against me, and I've just never seen this card being played against me. The next one is MERIGOLD'S Hailstorm. Spell, damage 5 enemy units by 2. Now, this is actually a card I have never seen played in this game ever. And I also understand why I've never seen this card being played. It is quite a conditional card. It plays for 10 for 9, which does create a bit of bloodthirst for something like Skellige, but there are just better cards that do the same thing more fast and sort of less conditional, and also give you a bit more points in a short round. Because this card is incredibly terrible in a short round, and I can see why people just wouldn't play a card with a design like this. So yeah, I do fully understand why people don't play this card, and this is actually one of the few cards in this video that I've actually never ever seen play. Like my counter on this is 0. I've never actually seen this card being played, and I can fully understand why, because the card just isn't that great, honestly. Then we have the Sausage Maker. Intimidate, profit 3, fee 5, gain resilience on the melee row. So this card I've actually also almost never seen. Like Marigold's Hailstorm, I've seen 0 times. This one I saw like 1 time in my life being played against me. I've played it a few times on stream here and there. But yeah, this card is really funny design-wise, but it's just not good enough point-wise. Its fee ability is a bit too expensive, I would say. If the numbers are tweaked, this card could actually see some decent amount of play. Maybe if it was just fee 3 gain resilience. Like, it needs a bit of an upside. This card is only good really if you draw it in round 1 and it can stay alive, so you can actually use the resilience in all 3 rounds basically. So yeah, I mean, the card itself is just really hard to fit into most Syndicate decks, because there's a very tight slot, or like a very tight sort of high provision slot that you just don't want to put anything weird in. And yeah, the Sausage Maker is just one of those cards that might need a bit of a numbers change, might need a bit of a tweak, and it could be better. But as for now, I've actually really never seen this card being played against me. Then we have The Last Wish. Look at the top 2 cards from your deck, then play one and banish the other. Now, at the start of Homecoming, people said this was going to be a really, really good card, and then people started playing it and people realized it was bad. That was the beta of Homecoming, so it wasn't actually officially Homecoming. So when Homecoming actually dropped, nobody played this card. So officially, I can say I've never actually seen this card being played in Gwent Homecoming. And I do see why. It thins your deck by 2, but it really has a huge downside. If you draw 2 good cards, you have to just banish one of them, which is absolutely horrible. It's just something you don't really want. So The Last Wish might need a bit of a rework, might need a bit of a buff. Honestly, I think at 6 provisions, this card could see play, but at 8 provision, it's way too expensive when cards like Oneiromancy exists, when all these sort of effective tutors exist. Like, there's really no point in playing this right now, and yeah, it might just need a bit of a change for it to become playable. Now, Vader Maker is a card I've also never really seen played, which has the deployability on melee to increase all row effects duration by 1 and deploy range decrease all row effect durations by 1. This card doesn't really play for much. Like, it's good with something like Skellige Storm or triggering a Dragon's Dream a turn earlier to sort of surprise your opponent. But even in the times where Dragon's Dream was a bit meta and people would actually play Iris for the weather clear that she had, this card even then still didn't see play. And because the card just isn't that fantastic, I think it would make sense at 6 provisions. And even then, it wouldn't see that much play, but at 7 provisions, I think the card is just overcosted. It also went through a bit of changes power-wise. I think it used to be like 8 provisions, like 5 power as well, like way overcosted or something. But yeah, the card right now is just not that great, and it never has been great. Like, there was never a reason to really run this card. I mean, I personally played the card, but as I said, I've never actually faced the card myself, so that's why Vader Maker is in the list. And here we have Kellag Diffrin. Deploy Purify all allied units on this row. So before this card actually existed in this form, this card was the same card with the same stats, 5 power, 7 provisions, which would remove the status from all units. But back then, statuses didn't really mean much. The only reason to play that was to purify immune statuses, but nobody would really do that, so nobody actually played this card. And I've never actually seen this card. Like, honestly, I probably played it once for the fun of it, but the card has no purpose in any deck whatsoever. It makes no sense. It has no synergies with Nilfgaard. Like, within Nilfgaard itself, there's no reason to run this card. And yeah, I can see why people just never played this card, because the card made no sense ever. So yeah, Kellag Diffrin, very bad card, and I've just never actually seen anyone play this card. Non-ironic, like, not even like non-ironic. I've just never seen anyone play this card realistically in all my time of Homecoming. This card has never actually entered the board and done anything. So yeah. And then we have Iris's Companions. Deploy, draw a card of your choice from your deck, then discard a random card. Now, this is another card that was overtly hyped during the beta of Homecoming. I think it had the same stat line as Mata. But back then, also, Phoenix was very powerful. Like, every deck would run Phoenix in beta Homecoming. But as I said, beta Homecoming doesn't really count as Homecoming. When Homecoming dropped, they made this, I think, like 5 power, 10 provisions or something. And it made, like, no sense. So nobody actually played this card. And then, like, better cards were added to the game. Better tutors were added to the game. So they kind of made this card not as bad. But now it's just still bad, right? This card is still terrible. And I've never actually seen anybody play this card. Not even, like, during the times where Discard Skellige was good. This still wasn't gonna see play ever, because just, like, discarding one of your golds is way too risky in this game, because the provisions, like, you're losing provisions if you discard a card higher provisions than 4, which is really, really bad, and which is why this card will never ever work in Homecoming Gwent, unless it doesn't discard the card you draw. In that case, it could work, but discarding a random card makes no sense for this card in the current state of the game. So there's ways to change this card and make it semi-playable, but the way it is currently written, no one would ever sort of really play this card for any reason, because cards like Mata exist, cards like Oneiromancy exist, and this card is just one of those cards that doesn't really have a purpose in the game. Then we have Ludouicus Brunenbaum. After 3 turns, gain 6 coins, Tribute 4, gains 6 coins immediately. So he plays for 7 points, but he gains 6 coins, which does synergize with cards like Bincy, because then you're basically gaining extra value because you're gaining 6 coins. And yeah, but like the card itself is kind of bad. I tried this in my shitty combos video, and even then it was kind of underwhelming. There's just better 7 provision cards within Syndicate, and this is a problem within Syndicate as well, because like a lot of these cards are just like, they're decent abilities, it's just like they're just better cards exist within the faction that work with coins, and I've actually never seen this card being played. Like that's also something I have to note. I've actually never seen this card being played against me. I've never ever had to worry about, oh no, do I have to play around LUDOUICUS BRUNENBAUM. Even when Merchants of Fury released, nobody actually played this card because everyone was so hyped about scenarios. Everyone just started playing scenarios and Redea decks immediately. So this card was just kind of thrown under the bus, and it never will probably resurge unless it gets like a bit of a power buff or removes the 3 turns and becomes like 2 turns, because like 3 turns is way too much for something like this insignificant. It's not really worth it, honestly. And yeah, I've just never seen this card being played, and yeah. Alright, next up is Tempest. Purify 3 adjacent enemy units and damage them by 2. So this card on release was 7 provisions, which is why nobody played it, because it was a 6 for 7 that was conditional of your opponent having 3 adjacent units next to each other. And the Purify effect only really benefited in seasonal modes. Like the seasonal mode we have right now, this card's actually pretty decent, but I don't think I want to count seasonal games because seasonals have kind of their own rule set. And Tempest, in general, it's not a bad card, but it just like, there's no real reason to play it. It seems like a filler card, and that's pretty much all it is. It's just a filler card. It could be alright against something like Nature's Gift, I guess. It's not terrible against Nature's Gift, but that's like such a niche matchup, and even then like the value that you get off it is not really that worth it. So I can see why I've never seen this card. I don't know how to fix this card or make it any better. Maybe make it like 2 adjacent units and damage them by 3. That would make it a bit better, because then you can also have an answer for something like Andrega Larva. But yeah, I've never actually seen Tempest being played. I'm not sure about you guys. You probably saw it in some seasonal modes, especially this one. I think I saw it quite a few times being played, but as I said, I don't think I want to count seasonal modes for this video. Otherwise, I would have probably already seen every card in the game. But for the content of this video, we're gonna obviously limit it to actual ranked gameplay. Alright, and next up we have Marlene the TRASTAMARA. Veil, order, give a unit Veil. Now this card was released with Master Mirrors, so it's definitely the newest card on the list so far. And yeah, like the card existed for 6 months, and I've never actually seen it. Like, I've never actually seen or heard the voice line of this card. I don't know what this card sounds like. I don't know what it looks like when this card enters the board, because I just never saw this card being played. Nor did I see this card ever in any sort of deck, because the card's just not that great. It's not like a Lady of the Lake where giving shield makes sense for an engine. Giving Veil to a unit would be good if there's like a incredible Nilfgaard meta, but Nilfgaard, since Master Mirror, has kind of like fallen out of favor slowly and steadily, which is why this card's kind of slowly fallen out of favor. So yeah, Marlene the TRASTAMARA, I was expecting to be more Veil synergies, but yeah, the card itself, really, there's no purpose. It's just another filler card, and I don't know how to fix it, honestly. Maybe give it a little boost as well. That would be quite nice for the card, because giving boost always helps a little bit, because Lady of the Lake gives you technically a boost with the shield, because it reverts like 1 damage, whereas the Veil doesn't really revert damage. You kind of want to protect your units also from damage, as well as sort of like poisons. But poisons aren't that prevalent anymore, which is why this card has never really been that prevalent in the first place. Alright, here's a little bit of a cheater. STAMMELFORD'S Tremors, damage all enemy units by 1. Now, before yesterday, I've actually never seen this card being played. But yesterday, I uploaded a video where I talked about my favorite meme decks that I played this season. And yesterday, I actually played against the Dagger deck that plays the STAMMELFORD'S Tremors. And, I mean, I beat that deck, but that's the first time I actually saw STAMMELFORD'S Tremors played against me. Before that, I've never actually seen the card being played. There was also a moment where I was on Spiro's stream, and he had the card created somehow through like Shoop, I think, and he didn't know what the card actually does. He didn't read the card. He thought it would damage all units and not just enemy units, and he discarded the card not knowing what the card does. So even Spiro, a person who plays this game pretty much every day of his life for like 6 hours straight, does not know what this card does. So I think it's fair to assume that a lot of players have never actually seen this card being played until obviously I released the deck for the Dagger list. Alright, then we have Shakedown. Profit 3, boost an allied unit by 3. Now this card in Syndicate exists in like 3 different forms. One where it damages, and one where it spawns the Firesworn dude, and then of course the Shakedown variant. And of all those variants, Shakedown is probably and most definitely the worst, since it requires you to have a unit and you have to boost that unit so you go tall as well. I think this works best with something like Greater Brothers, but even then, it's not that fantastic, honestly. I think I saw this card being played once on the day that Syndicate as a faction was released, so I don't really count that as seeing it actually being played because everyone was just playing whatever for Syndicate. And yeah, Shakedown was definitely one of those cards that just wasn't that great, honestly. It never has been great. It might have to get some sort of buff. It could honestly become a 4 provision card, and I would see it becoming a lot better. But at 5 provisions, I don't think there's any reason to ever play this card. So yeah, that's Shakedown for you. Alright, and next up we have Will of the Wisp, Destroy Doomed unit. Now this actually surprises me, because I thought I was going to see this card at least 2 or 3 times ever since Master Mirror expansion. But I've actually never seen this card being played apart from myself playing it. But yeah, apart from that, I've actually never seen somebody play this card against me, which is quite fascinating because it's an interesting effect, and I am playing in sort of meme ranks. Even on pro rank, I'm playing in the lower MMR, so people might be memeing there. It destroys a doomed unit. You need to set it up with Gaunter, or you basically are reliant on your opponent boosting doomed units or playing something like Savola or Arnjolf for it to gain good value. But at the end of the day, it kind of doesn't really trade up too much unless you have Gaunter, and even then, like, Gaunter himself kind of does the same thing with a 5 body. So yeah, Will of the Wisp, I see why people don't play this card, but I'm just kind of surprised that I've never actually seen this card. And here we have Scout, Human Soldier Veil. It's a 5 body on 5 provisions. This used to have the ability to clear weather on a row. And even when it was able to do that, nobody played this card because people would play Iris. And Iris's ability used to be to either destroy an artifact or clear all weather effects on, I think, both players' sides. So nobody would play Scout because Iris was just more versatile and you would just play 2 extra provisions for a 1 point stronger body and the versatility on also destroying artifacts. So people would never like play Scout, and the Scout rework when they changed the weather effects was to just give it a Veil status and just kind of make it more of a filler card than it already was. So I've never actually seen Scout being played, and I can see why. I mean, it's just a filler card. They don't really need to make this card good. It's just kind of sad that the card will never ever see play. And next up we have Traveling Merchant. Deploy range, shuffle a card from your hand into your deck, then draw a card. Now, funny thing about this card is that there actually was a bug with this card where if you played this card, you would get card advantage. Like, the card would not shuffle another card back. You would just basically be a 4 body, draw a card. I think actually it was 3 body back when that bug existed, but people would abuse that bug for like a day, but I never actually played against it. I never actually encountered that bug in my life, and therefore I never actually also played against this card, even when the bug existed. I saw the bug existing on a lot of sort of streams and people complaining about it, but me personally, I've never actually played against it. And obviously after the bug, the card was rendered useless because the card just kind of sucks, so there's no really reason to ever play it apart from that bug. So yeah, Traveling Merchant, a card I've never seen and a card I probably will never see, especially with the stat line that he has and his ability just being garbage. And here we have Temerian Infantry. Deploy damage an enemy unit by 1 for each boosted unit in this row. How have I never seen this card being played? I'm always baffled when I look at this card. I always want to make a meme cards video around this card, but then I'm just like, nah, let's just do something else. Let's just do I don't know, I think something in your brain just like wants to not play this card. I think I played this card like once or twice, but I've never actually played against it. But the thing that baffles me the most is that this card has never actually changed its effect. Even in early Homecoming, nobody played this card because Northern Realms in general was a bit of a bad faction back in those days. But even now, with Northern Realms being actually good, it just never finds any purpose in any deck for some reason. I find it so baffling because it's actually a really powerful effect, but nobody ever plays this card. Nobody's ever played this card. How does that happen? How is it possible? I've never actually played against this card. It's crazy. It's actually so fascinating because it's such a basic and vanilla effect. I would expect it to see it at least in one deck, but I've never actually seen this card being played against me. Here we have another Syndicate card, OKENFURT Naturalist. Profit 2 fee, 1 given allied unit vitality for 1 turn. And yeah, I mean, the thing is, when Syndicate released, they released this card before Blacksmith, and people were like, oh, this is a decent spender, this is pretty alright, it gives your units 1 boost. And then they released Blacksmith, and people just forgot about this card completely, because this card is basically like just a worse version of Blacksmith in every possible way. And I've been talking about this card in like a lot of videos where I just talk about bad cards, because this is like the definition of a bad card. It is literally worse than a card that exists in the same provision range, so there's really no reason to ever play it, and that's also the reason why I've never seen it being played. So yeah, OKENFURT Naturalist needs a bit of a change, because it's too similar to another card that exists in that faction, and that card doesn't even see play these days anymore. Like, Blacksmith used to see play quite frequently, because it was quite a efficient spender, but OKENFURT Naturalist, yeah, that guy just never got anything done, honestly. Alright, and here we have Caravan Guard, a Merchants of a Fury card with deploy damage an enemy unit by 1. Increase the damage by 1 for each 3 power the target has. So basically, the bigger the unit, the bigger the damage. So I think you're dealing 2 damage if the card has 3 power, and you're dealing 3 damage if it has 6, and then 4 if it has 9, etc, etc. So yeah, this card's kind of like a tall punish that doesn't really punish the tall, because it doesn't actually remove the big card, it just kind of damages it. So it's kind of like a Ulf hidden that's just not as good. It's not terrible right now. Like, a lot of cards go tall. Like, if you hit like a 20-something point Hamadryad, it plays for 10 points. But then the Hamadryad still trades up to that, so the card never really trades up to anything. If it had like a 4 body, it would be a lot better. Maybe tweaking the numbers helps, but I think the ability itself is a bit just too complicated, or just like too conditional for it to really gain value consistently. So yeah, Caravan Vanguard, a card I've never actually seen play. I wonder if you guys ever seen it, but I definitely haven't. And now we move on to the 4 provision cards. Inspirational Ballad being one of them. Give vitality to an allied unit for 6 turns. When Crimson Curse released, this card wasn't played, and ever since then the card was never really played. You have some potential combos with Tridem Infantry or Pistodi, but realistically, you just play like Drummers or, you know, Anna, or just any sort of boost card rather than this, because this is just way too slow. It sucks in a short round. It's not even that good in like a long round, because it just plays for 6 points over 5 turns, right? So that's really bad. And yeah, like Inspirational Ballad, just a terrible card in general. And the same also goes for Undying First, except Undying First is even worse than Inspirational Ballad, because it's just so much slower. Because you have to wait a turn for your opponent, and then it bleeds, then you have to wait another turn. It's so it's basically Inspirational Ballad, but a lot worse. And this card used to combo with, I think, Garcane, which used to damage a unit by its bleeding, which made no sense, because you would basically set up a 6 damage for a 3-point card over 2 cards, which is absolutely terrible. Plus, the 6 damage gets reduced to 5 the next turn anyway. So even then, nobody played this combo, because the combo is just too slow, not good enough, and it just gets dealt with Purify these days anyway. So yeah, Undying First, one of the bad cards that exist in this game that really have no purpose. Alright, we're getting really close to the end, and we're gonna look at Wretched Addict. Every ally turn on turn end, if this unit is poisoned, boosted by 1. I don't think I actually saw this even on the release of Syndicate. I think, actually, I've never seen this card being played. And it might see play in the future expansion, where Self-Poison Syndicate could be a viable archetype. Who knows? We'll have to see, obviously. But yeah, Wretched Addict in its form always has been kind of an issue. He's not that great in general. Like, it's a poisoned unit that keeps boosting itself by 1. So it's like, if the opponent has poison, you're just kind of playing for 0 value in that situation. And yeah, you don't really want that, and that's the issue with the card, basically. And yeah, that's why I don't think I've ever seen this card ever being played. And the last card for today's video is KORATHI Heatwave. I've never seen this card being played. I don't know why everyone's complaining about it. It makes no sense. Okay, obviously I'm joking here. The last card I've never seen played is Peasant Militia. Deploy boost an allied unit by 2. The most vanilla card in the game with the Wolf Pack, but Wolfpack actually saw some play with Beast Skellige back when, you know, Bear Masters would be able to do the same thing that Flaminica does right now, And you could just replay Bearmasters though, which was really, really powerful back in the day. But yeah, Wolfpack saw playing that. Peasant Militia, obviously not, because it's not a beast. Apparently Gravesh put this card into his Hidden Cache list once. That was back when Hidden Cache was probably the tier 0 deck. He put this card into his deck so that people don't ban his Hidden Cache because they see the Peasant Militia and think, maybe I can win if he like draws Peasant Militia in like a short round or something. But yeah, it kind of baited out a lot of people not banning Hidden Cache in that situation. So that's when I actually saw it. But playing against it, never ever. I've never played against this card. I don't think I'll ever play against this card because, do I need to explain it? This card's just bad. Like, it doesn't need to be good as well. Like, I'm not saying this should get like a 5p buff where it becomes like, oh, billions of points. It's Peasant Militia, for God's sakes. Let it be what it is, and it's fine the way it is, because no one will ever play it, because it's just a peasant. You don't want to play with the peasants when you can play with the kings, the monsters, the elves, the rebels, and that's what Gwent is all about. You don't want to play with these peasants. You want to play with the real cards. And yeah, that was the video of me telling you about cards that I've never seen being played. I'm not even sure what I want to call this video, but I do want to know which cards you guys have never seen played, because I've played a lot of Gwent in my time, and the fact that there are still cards that exist that I've never actually played against or seen being played against me is quite fascinating. For a card game with as big of a card collection and as big of like variety and sort of game styles and sort of play styles that exist. And I'm curious to see what some of you veteran players have to say about this, because obviously the newer players will probably not have faced a lot of these cards because there were a lot of metas where certain cards were in pretty much every deck. But even the new players can still write down in the comments which cards they've never seen or which cards they're surprised to have never seen. That's also a very interesting aspect of these sort of videos, is to kind of get to know what level everybody is on, sort of my viewer base. That's always very interesting to see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this discussion video. As for gameplay videos from me, right now I'm kind of running dry on ideas, so I'm gonna try and sort of balance it out a bit more with making non-gameplay videos and like gameplay videos, because I still want to give you guys content, but like if I don't really have many ideas of decks to play, because let's be real, we've been in this meta for a long time and a lot of the decks have already been discovered, and when I'm gonna try and discover a deck, I want it to be like really special, not just like a random deck put together that just like blah blah blah. I want to actually like have like proper decks to play with, and that's why I won't be uploading as much gameplay until the expansion releases. And yeah, I hope you guys understand that, and I also hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe for more Gwent content, and I'll see you soon.